Hello, and welcome to another episode of Professional Book Girl. My name is Kayla, and I read a ton of books so that I can recommend the best to you. And that is what we are going to be doing today on the very first episode of 2024. Happy New Year. I know we launched in 2023, but in so many ways, 2024 really feels like the year of Professional Book Girl. This is the year we're getting it all started. If you're watching on video, you can see I have a new mic. She's pink. I have new headphones. Also got a new webcam, but did not prep that enough ahead of time. So not using that today, but she will be in play soon. I am so excited that it is a new year, and I'm going to talk about that more in a second. But I'm so excited for this announcement that we're going right into it. I have a New Year's gift for all of you. I today am announcing the Professional Book Girl book club. This is something I had in my mind when I decided to do a podcast, and it took me a bit to figure out exactly how it would come to life. And honestly, it was you guys requesting episodes with spoilers that made me come up with this full idea. So you may remember in the past on another podcast I was on, we had a book club on our Patreon, and I decided that I will not be doing it that way. Maybe one day down the line, Professional Book Girl will have its own Patreon. I have some fun ideas for that, but we are not there yet. This book club, all of you listening now are members of the book club, so welcome. It is free, it is not behind a paywall, and there will be special book club episodes. So how is this going to work? Today, I am announcing our very first book club, the January book club pick, and it is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And I'm sure a bunch of you listening have probably already read this. That's kind of partly why I chose this book. I wanted something that I know people have read and already have thoughts on, and then something that I've been meaning to read this forever. It's one of my 24 and 24 books, which we're going to talk about a little bit further into this episode. I'm hoping it will be available on like library holds and things like that. The book club will have picks that are new, because I think that is really fun to do, but I also want to mix in backlist titles so that way it's easy for you guys to get it from the library or just pick it up somewhere inexpensively. So that is the first book club pick. So basically what's going to happen now with Professional Book Girl, every month we will have a book club pick, and then I am still figuring this out. I want you guys to let me know how you want the episodes to happen. Should it be just a full episode on a Monday, or I'm thinking about having it be a bonus episode in the last week of the month where I will talk about the book, do a review like I usually do on this show, but then I will also obviously include spoilers for it, go deeper than I already do, because I can talk about spoilers, give my thoughts on characters, everything like that. And then this is where you guys come in. I want you guys to be a part of these book club episodes. So once you read the book, take a short video of yourself, or just on your phone, make a voice memo, your thoughts on the book, whatever you want to say. Obviously, spoilers if you liked it, if you didn't like it. We want all the opinions here so that the book club episodes are well-rounded. And then email them to me at professionalbookgirlpod@gmail.com. It'll be linked in the show notes, all of this info. And I will be including all of those voice notes on the episode. If you send me a video, I'll just use your voice, don't worry. But I want you guys, I want it to feel like a real book club where you're getting different opinions. And I think this is the best way to do that. I am so excited about this. I've had this planned for over a month now at this point. I'm like, I just cannot wait to get started. So I am so excited. We have a book club. It is going to be so much fun. It is very low stakes. There's no signing on to join a discussion. It is just you read the book and then you get to hear what everyone else is thinking about it. And it's going to be so much fun. So like I said, the first pick is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I am so excited to finally read this book. I'm sure there will be lots for us to discuss. And yes, so I guess we should, now that that big announcement is over, let's get into the episode. I hope you guys all had a lovely holiday, whatever you were celebrating. It is New Year's Day. I am filming this on 5 p.m. on New Year's Eve, so the year is almost over, and I'm ready to let 2023 go. This has been the weirdest year of my life, and I've spoken about this a lot on my Instagram, KRedWhat, but I've never been at a New Year's Eve thinking I'm so ready for this year to end. I've had it throughout my life. I've gone through crazy shit, and there's always highs and lows. But this year, it was just the craziest highs and then the craziest lows. And it was kind of back and forth and insane and no in between. And for a good portion of the second half of this year, I was like, this was the worst year of my life. Just so many bad things kept happening. But I don't know. Now, maybe it's because it's I'm looking back at the whole year in review, and like so many good things happened this year too. Like I went on my UK trip, my dream month-long trip. This like 2023 will always be that year. Obviously, the Eras tour was such a huge thing. My sister and I went to Disney earlier in the year. Like so many good things happened this year too, which I am so grateful for. But like a lot of bad things happened this year, and I'm ready to move on. And I feel like I went through everything and then I ended the year in like a really good and healthy spot, which I'm so grateful for. And I feel like I'm ready to enter 2024 on a good note. I'm sure some shit will go down next year that I'll just have to deal with, but I'm kind of just like happy to leave 2023 in the past. And I feel like a lot of people are feeling like that. People I've been talking to, someone said to me that this feels like a transition year for a lot of people. And I definitely feel that way. I'm in such a huge transition period of my life. Like, I actually have no idea what 2024 has in store for me. I know my life will be changing. I just don't know how. So, usually in the past, that would have like really tripped me out and I would have not been okay. But I'm kind of embracing that like unknown and not knowing what my future holds. I have no idea like where I will be, where I'll be working, any of that. So yeah, I'm ready for 2024. I'm ready to just get rid of 2023 and enter a new year. But one of the positive things about 2023 was that I had what was arguably my best reading year ever, which I have been saying this every year. I was thinking about it today. I started my bookstagram in 2018. That was also the year I got Goodreads. And it's like year over year, it just keeps getting better and better. And I think it's as I like really devoted to reading full time, I've just become so much better at picking up reads that are right for me and like um it's just like my reading year gets better and better every year, and also the number of books that I've read have gotten better every year. So I am ending the year honestly. We're coming down to a bit of a nail biter because I have 120 pages left in A Court of Frost and Starlight, the novella of Akatar, and I thought I would finish it today. But I've just gotten word that we're leaving a little bit earlier than anticipated for my family's New Year's Eve party. And I'm just now sitting down to record this 2 hours before we're leaving. And I'm going to try to edit it before we go. So this will be a little bit of you guys will know tomorrow morning when this episode goes live what I don't know right now. Will I make it to 252 books or will we be stopping it at 251? Honestly, either will be fine. I just don't really like ending the year in the middle of a book. And I always do this to myself on New Year's Eve. I always will like start one late on the 30th or like today pick something up on the 31st and be like, oh yeah, I'll definitely finish it. And it's like a curse of New Year's Eve that like I'm just not able to finish it in time. So I always do those. I usually like rush to get the pages in. So we will see. We'll see what happens tonight. It is stressing me out a little bit. It's like sitting like I feel like it's staring at me. If you're watching a video, I keep looking off to the corner. I feel like it's just sitting there like taunting me. Like I should not have slept in until noon. I should have woken up earlier and started reading that book. So that way I could end on an even note and an even number. But 251 is really just insane. I feel like to round out to a whole number, we can say I read 250 books. That's what I've been saying in like my reels and my TikToks because I feel like it just sounds better. It is absolutely insane. Like no one is more aware of that than I am. And I said this when I was talking about like my favorite books of the year. It would not have happened if I was not unemployed. I feel like I would have ended the year. My goal probably would have been 203 because I'm pretty sure for the last 2 years it was 201 and then 202. So I liked doing like just one more than the year before. And I was talking about this a little bit on my stories on KRedWa towards um the end of the summer, really, I was starting, it was probably before I left my job. So I guess like in July, I was like, I feel like I can make it to 200 again. And I was really setting out for that goal, which is really like, I'm such a hypocrite because I say I have no numerical goal and I'm not planning on putting a number in Goodreads tomorrow. I'm planning on putting one and then just seeing what happens, which I think is really cool. And I think that's a cool way to do it. If you know you're going to be reading a lot, I think that Goodreads goals are really a great motivator to get people to read more. But if you already know you're going to be reading a lot, like I think it's fun to just like see how much you can read, but like without the pressure of your Goodreads goal. But give myself a goal of 200. So we shall see like where we end up. But I have a feeling I will not be reading 250 books next year. So I've said this every year. I don't imagine I will read this much again. And I always top myself, but I just topped myself so much this year. Like I just don't know how it would happen. If it does, that would be so cool. But I think it'll just be cool for the rest of my life to be able to say like, oh yeah, 1 year I read 250 books. And I'm just going to say it right now. And I always feel like I have to. Reading is also kind of like my job because of this. So whatever number you ended the year at, I think that is amazing. If anyone who read one book this year, like that is something to be proud of. So I'm curious, like how much, like what were your reading goals? Let me know in the comments on this Instagram post. I'd love to know how your reading year shaped up. But I do have some interesting stats because I just always like find this interesting. So we're going to say, because as of the time of this recording, 251 reads. 25 of those were 5-star reads. And now if you, on my Read What stories, when I do like book whatever down and on to the next, for those who probably didn't do this, but if you go through, I save all those to highlights, 2023 reads. Obviously tomorrow or today where you're listening, we'll start 2024 reads. If you go through and count, there are more than 25 reads, but I decided that since one of my goals for this year was to reread a childhood favorite every month, and I gave almost all of those books 5 stars. And then I have been rereading A Court of Thorns and Roses while I'm home, and I've been giving all of those books 5 stars. But I decided that the reread 5 stars do not count towards my 5-star books of the year because they just don't. Like they were counted towards whatever it was when I initially read that. So 25 new books read that I gave 5 stars, which it just ended up being that round number, which I think is really cool. It kind of low. It's a little low compared to the number of books that I read, but I think it just shows that, like I spoke about, I've gotten very picky with what I give 5 stars, and I want to keep doing that. I don't want to just start giving them out willy-nilly because I think it makes those 25 reads that much more special. And I really loved them if they stood out above the other 225 books that I read. Another interesting stat, I only had 4 DNFs, which if you don't know what DNF means, that means do not finish. In 2022, I had 16, and I was very happy with that number. I'm not happy with 4 DNFs, and it might not be for the reason that you think. I wish I DNF'd more. So I don't know what happened to me this year. Once again, if you saw my stories on Kayla, but I feel like I had a lot of 1-star reads. And when I give a book 1 star, it means I wish I didn't finish this book. I should have DNF'd it, but for some reason I kept going. And I did that so much this year, specifically in the last 3 months. Like I'm very conscious that I was doing that, and I just like don't know why. And I think maybe I thought I had DNF more throughout the year, but the other day I went through and counted and it was only 4, and I'm DNFing more in 2024 because I was just like torturing myself to get through books, and like there is absolutely no need to be doing that. Like there is no point in reading a book that you don't like because there are so many great books out there and like that you should be reading instead. So I'm not happy with the 4 DNFs. I kind of wish it was more, but we're going to turn that around in 2024. And then my last little interesting stat is that I completed my 23 and 23. So with my old podcast, Books in the City, we would choose 23 books to go with the year 2023 and read. The point was that you had to read all of them in the year, and you were supposed to have owned them for over a year. And it was a way to like get through books that have just been sitting on your shelf forever. It was the second year that we did it. This year, I liked 8 of them. In 2022, I liked 6. So I found this to be really an interesting exercise in, I guess there has been a reason why these books have been sitting on my shelf for so long. And both times, or actually no, in 2022, I just pulled books from my shelves. And then in 2023, I did a huge book clear out of unread books. And I like went through and I thought about each book and I was like, am I actually going to read this or not? And I got rid of books. And then with everything that was left, I chose my 23 and 23 books, and I liked 8 of them. So 8 of them have stayed in my personal library, and then the other ones were donated. And I think it is better. Like we got a bit better, but I think just once again, there's a reason why it took me 1+ years to pick up these books. So I have chosen my 24 and 24 books, and I would love for you guys to join me on this challenge. So you can just say 24 and 24 or 24 and 24 with PBG. I think would be so fun. I've loved over the years of doing this with the other podcast, like seeing what everybody's reading and how we do it. My trick I will share with you guys, because you know I love a monthly TBR. At the beginning of every month, I pull 2 books from that stack to be on to be in that monthly TBR, and it is a way for me to get to them. If I don't read them in that month, whatever it means, they're already on that TBR. I think in December I read 3 or 4 of them, honestly, but I got through all of them. I'm so excited to do it again. I did another huge book clear out before I pulled these 24 books. Some of them I have owned for so long. I'm so excited to start getting through them. And like I mentioned earlier in the episode, our January book club pick is one of my 24 and 24 books because it hasn't even been out for a year. That might be me kind of cheating with that 24 and 24, but I've known forever, like I guess it still goes with it because it's a book that I've owned and that people have been telling me to read forever and I just haven't. So I'm reading in 2024 with all of you guys. Yeah, so that's a reading goal for 2024. I also want to DNF more. And then I did make a little note in my phone of my 2024 reading goals, which I will just share with you guys now. So the number one is no numerical goal, but the secret wish goal that's not going in Goodreads is 200 books, 24 and 24. I am going to read one nonfiction a month. I've done this for honestly maybe 4 years now. I'm not a huge nonfiction girly, but I think there are ones that I'm always interested in. I want to read. Most of them are celebrity memoirs or like histories about some sort of royal family. So I read one a month, but I also, like I told you guys on a previous episode, I'm going to be doubling that though, because I'm going to be doing one history book on audio a month. I want to read one Kindle book a month. I have so many books on my Kindle and I just like, it's because I can't see them that I just don't automatically go to them. I always just like will pick up a book that I can see in my room, but I recently got Kindle Unlimited. So I want to do one Kindle read a month. I did this the last 2 years. Also, I'm following last year's trend of one childhood reread a month. And I am very excited because I'm starting the year off by rereading the Private series by Kate Bryan, which I have spoken about many times over my career as a person who talks about books on the internet. This is a book series that my friends and I were obsessed with in high school. And for my birthday a few years ago, I didn't own all the books. I borrowed them from my best friend. My sister got me the whole series, so I'm going to reread them. There's 17 books, so I think I'm going to do 2 a month with that one. And then I think once I finish that, I think I'm going to reread The Click. It should start around my 30th birthday in July, and I just feel like there's something cool and weird and ridiculous about me, like revisiting the books that really shaped me as a young, like 12 or 13-year-old. Around my 30th birthday. So those are the childhood books I'm planning on rereading this month. Like I said, I want to DNF more. I want to read from my shelves more. I think we all say that. I want to be stricter about the books that I bring into my home. And then the last one, maybe this will be a bit of a throw you for a loop here. I want to read Lord of the Rings. The past few years, I've hit a series that I've been meaning to read. I've never seen a Lord of the Rings movie. I don't really know anything about it, but I have the books and I want to read them. I think I might like watch the first movie first to make sure that I'm kind of into it before committing to those books. Although they're not like, I have the first 3. Is that all of them? I don't know. I know there's like The Hobbit then. That's like a spin-off thing, right? But yeah. So that's kind of like goes in my 24 and 24, except like not. It's just like I'm making myself read this series. I didn't, although in this year I read Narnia. 2022 is my Game of Thrones year. So kind of going with that theme, like these series I've always been meaning to read. Lord of the Rings will be the one for this year, which I don't know, I'm excited about. I feel like people really love it. So we'll see if I love it. And yes, so initially I told you guys this was going to be like a fun little mini episode, but while I was covering my favorite books of the year, I actually had so many great reads that I'm excited to talk to you guys about. I only took 1 week off, but like I missed being on the mic. So I am excited to talk to you guys about 3 books that I loved I was just busy covering all of the top books of the year, which I hope you guys enjoyed those episodes. It was really fun this 2023 was the first year I ever decided my favorite books in an order. And it was hard, but it was fun. And I loved like hearing that you guys had similar favorites. It was just a really cool experience, but I'm excited to be back to normal episodes now. So without further ado, here are 3 books that I loved in the month of December. Usually when I do this, I always say to you guys like, no notes, just vibes, but I always have like a little bullet list. There are no bullets. The only bullets I wrote today are the character names because I have just been rushing around to try to get this episode recorded and edited before it is the new year. So really, you're really just getting like a stream of consciousness, which you guys have told me that's what this podcast feels like. And that is my goal. I want you guys to feel like you're just on a FaceTime with me, listening to me talk. But there's really like, there's no, like, I'm just going to be like entering like Jimmy Neutron brain blast, entering the recesses of my mind, picturing the movie that I saw when I read these books. So here we go. The first book is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. I loved this book, and I'm going to preface it all by saying it is YA, but it does not feel so young. When people say they can't get into YA because it feels young, I don't I like YA, and I think because it feels young in a way, like it's just like easier to read. I feel like they're a bit more fun. This is described by the author as a historical fantasy. So, like, sign me up right away. But this felt more magical realism to me than straight fantasy. And this is the first book in a series, so who knows, it might get into more into fantasy. But the historical aspect is really like the number one thing of it, and what really drew me to this book. I got it from Book of the Month, and they were kind of describing it as something similar to Indiana Jones. And I was like, do you know what? It would be fun to like read and like go on like an adventure, like an Egyptian adventure, because this takes place in Egypt. So that is what I did. And I really loved it. So, but I didn't see the criticism for this book. But then when I posted that I loved it, people were messaging me and they were like, I'm so happy to see you loved it because I've been seeing people not like it and I wanted to read it. So obviously everybody has their own opinions and takes, but I really loved this book. I really enjoyed it. And ended on such an insane cliffhanger. I'm so excited to see where the rest of the series goes. But what is this book about? So our main girl is Inez. I'm pretty sure she is 17 and she lives in Buenos Aires, and she is pretty much living full time with her aunt and her cousins, and they're wealthy, they're kind of upper echelons of society. She kind of knows that she's going to have to make like a society marriage. She doesn't want to though, and her parents are away half the year, like every year pretty much, in Egypt, because they are super into like Egypt and the archaeological digs. And this is around the time, it takes place in the 1800s. And this is when they were like really like all the foreigners were there, like the English especially were there, like digging up the tunnels. And I'm laughing because there's a song from The Lion King too, dig a tunnel, dig a tunnel. And that's just what I popped into my head as I said that. But they're like looking for, this is, I'm pretty sure, around the time of when like they found King Tut and things like that. So it's like archaeological sites, and there's really no government oversight because the British were like, the colonizers there. And the real history of this is that they were able to take what they found home. And now there is a historical fiction novel by Jill Paul called The Collector's Daughter that I read actually when I was on my way home for Christmas 2 years ago. I really liked that book. It is a true story about it's based on a true story about a woman who her dad funded the archaeological dig where they found King Tut's remains. And now here is where I get to link this to my UK trip. So, because we literally have not had one episode yet where I've not brought up that trip. So the man who found that, his family seat is Highclere Castle, which is the real Downton Abbey. It is where they filmed Downton Abbey. And I went there. I went to Highclere Castle. I've spoken about it on the podcast. I literally planned my trip around their opening days because I had to go to Downton Abbey. And when you go there, when you buy your ticket, it's like for the estate, and you can like tour. The family literally lives there. So like you're touring their house, but it looks exactly like the inside did in Downton Abbey, except like kind of modern touches. It was really insane and cool. But then I bought a ticket where you could go to the Egyptian museum in the basement. And I was like, I guess since I'm there, like I should do it. But when I went down there, I was like, I feel like I shouldn't be here. So you go, like, you tour through the house. Like if you watch Downton Abbey, like you're walking through like the library and like the Great Hall and like the famous staircase and everything. And then you go down to where the kitchens were and like the servants' quarters, and there's a little cafe in there. So I ate lunch in like the servants' quarters, whatever. And I was like, oh my God, like Downton Abbey, whatever. And then you go down into the basement from there, and it's eerie in a sense because you're walking through and there's like, they literally made it a museum. So you see like information about the Lord that funded it, and he was there. And like, if you want to learn more about this, I really recommend reading The Collector's Daughter. But there's all information about that. And then there's Egyptian artifacts everywhere. And then so you go through like another room, and they kind of like recreated some things and whatever. And then you go into another room, and there's a sarcophagus there, like a literal sarcophagus that they stole from a pyramid, like a tomb in Egypt. And I was just like, I felt so wrong. Like I felt like it wasn't supposed to be there because it's not, because there were no laws in place. So anything they found, they were allowed to take back, like literally just to their homes. Like it's not even in a museum. It's like in this guy's home for the last 200 years. And it just felt like, I don't know, I was like, is there like magic attached to this? Like it just felt like really gross to me and weird. And so I went into it just felt wrong. I didn't want to spend a long time in that presence. I didn't take like any pictures or videos when I was down there. I was like, I just felt like eh, bad vibes, like not good. So I quickly got out of the basement and went back upstairs to Downton Abbey. But the whole time I was reading this book, I had that in mind, and that having that experience, I think, impacted how I read this book. And now, listening to that story, if you go and read this book, keep that in mind. So, anyway, our main girl is Inez, and she is living with her aunt and uncle. Her parents are in Egypt, and she, because of her parents' love for Egypt, she has always loved Egypt too, and she's always wanted to go, but they basically like never let her. They're always saying like, you're too young, whatever, it's too dangerous, blah blah blah. So the book opens. This isn't a spoiler because it happens in the first chapter, and a messenger comes and she finds out that her parents have died in Egypt, and she is now in the custody of her uncle, who is her mom's brother, who like lives in Egypt full time. She met him once as a child, does not know him well at all. Like, so she's basically in the custody of a stranger. She obviously inherited great wealth now from her parents, and he is kind of in control of all of it until she turns 18 or like comes to like a certain age or whatever. So she's like, I'm going to Egypt because she's like, I want to find out what happened to my parents. Where were they? Like, what was this like dig that they were on? She wants to know everything. So she gets on a ship and she goes to Egypt, and she had like sent a letter to her uncle ahead of time, and he's supposed to meet her at the port. But instead, he sent his like associate, like it's just basically this guy who works for him, and his name is Wit. And Wit is a little bit older. Maybe she is 18 because I think it was like all legal because they like obviously stuff happens, but I hope it was all legal. But he's like 20 maybe, and he is British, and you find out that he is from an aristocratic family, but he is a second son. So he was kind of sent off to war, and then he became like really into Egypt and what was going on there, and started working for Inez's uncle. And so the uncle sends Wit to pick her up, but he's really trying to get her back on the ship because the uncle does not want her there at all. But she refuses to, and whatever, hijinks ensue. Basically, what ends up happening is that she ends up on this dig, on this quest with her uncle and Wit, because they are searching for Cleopatra's tomb. And the whole thing is that they're trying to find it before this other group of people, because those people are not going to preserve it, and they're going to steal all of the artifacts and bring them back to England. Like, and then they would end up in Downton Abbey, and then I would go see it in 200 years, is basically what would happen. But this, like I said, this is magical realism. So the magic system in this world is that the ancient Egyptians had magic, and then they left it kind of in their objects. So Inez is, I guess, they don't really explain it. Like, she's not like a witch or something like that, but she, I guess, is very sensitive to the magic. So when she touches one of the objects, it kind of becomes a part of her. And then she would be able to see, like, so if she touched Cleopatra's ring, she would see like a moment of Cleopatra's life and like a memory or whatever. So they go on this adventure to find Cleopatra's tomb. They're on the Nile. There's like crocodiles. There's danger. There's a love story between her and Wit. There are crazy twists and turns. Like, I don't want to say anything for spoilers, but my jaw dropped a few times. It was just a really fun adventure. Like, it really is an adventure book. And also, the Egyptian history was so interesting. The Collector's Daughter was the only book that I've read that like touched on Egypt in this way, and this is just told in such a different way. Like, you are there, you're on the Nile with her, you are going into the tombs and stuff, you're going into the pyramids. It was so cool. It was so atmospheric. You really felt like you were there. Some events were like very high stakes. The mystery was so well done. It was just so good and so interesting. And I like I said before, the ending, like the plot twist at the end, I was like, oh my God, like I cannot wait for another one. I really, really love this. Like, I highly recommend, if you're just looking for, I would give it like that Indiana Jones vibe. It's just like a fun adventure story, different from anything else that I've ever read. And the author of this book actually is like best friends with the author of Divine Rivals. So I just thought that was like really cute, because I also love Divine Rivals in 2023. That is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez, and I gave it 4 stars. Our second book is another YA, and this is Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Now, I am a huge Huge fan of Allie Hazelwood's books. I've spoken about this before in like videos and past podcast episodes, but I put off her first book, The Love Hypothesis, for a bit because the science of it all really intimidated me. And if you have not picked up any of her books because of that, I'm here to tell you, like, you do not need to be worried about that. She writes about science, and in this book is about chess in a way that makes you feel like you're learning, but also you're so easily able to slip into that world. Like, when I saw Oppenheimer, I was like, oh, I know what they're talking about for some of the things because of her book Love Theoretically, which I just thought was so cool. So they're fun romance books, and then you're also like learning science. Like, I'm a STEM girly now from reading Allie Hazelwood books, but this one is her first foray into the YA genre. When I heard she was doing that, I was kind of like, oh, like I just wish it was another adult book. But oh, was I wrong? Because this reads just as great as her other books. The only thing is that there's no steam, which like I love from her books, but everything else, like, it is a classic Allie Hazelwood. I loved this book. So what is it about? Our main girl is Mallory, and she just graduated high school. She's not going to college. She works in a mechanic shop, and she is basically the sole supporter of her family. Her family's plotline was really interesting to me. So her dad is out of the picture, but you know that her and her dad used to be very close, and that he was, I don't know the chess terms, but he was like a big chess guy, right, in that world. And he taught her how to play chess. And at one point, she was kind of this like child prodigy. But for some reason that we don't find out for a long time into the book, she completely stopped playing chess and kind of shunned, like, she wants nothing to do with her dad. And there's something like she blames herself for, and like for her family's current situation. She has two younger sisters that I really loved. They were like so sweet, and but also the way that their relationships get strained and stuff. I think Allie Hazelwood did a really good job about writing about different dynamics between sisters and specifically siblings. And from coming from the perspective of an oldest sibling, like, I was able to relate to things that Mallory was going through. But then her mom has, I'm pretty sure it was like severe arthritis. And she, because of the stuff with the dad, and then um they're basically like they can't really afford her medication. So she would be fine if she could take her medicine, but she can't. So Mallory is pretty much like the breadwinner of the family and completely taking care of her siblings, to the point that sometimes it was like almost like the mom wasn't even alive and she had custody of her sisters. That's what it felt like the way that she is so like the sole caretaker pretty much of her entire family. So we know that she used to be into chess and then completely stopped. And at the same time, we know that there is this guy, Nolan, who is the current world chess champion. And he's young. I think he's like 20, and he's gorgeous. Like, he's so hot. And he basically blew up on TikTok for, I guess, because of like he was so good looking, and like his reputation. He's kind of like a bad boy reputation in the chess world. And he is kind of like has become famous outside of the chess world because of how famous he became on TikTok. And he's kind of being praised by like making chess cool and getting like more people involved in chess and all this stuff. So Mallory's best friend bribes her to be a part of this chess tournament one day in New York City. Mallory lives in New Jersey, and she goes very much so against her will. And she plays and she plays and she keeps winning. And then all of a sudden she ends up in the top spot. And who is she against? None other than Nolan, the number one chess player in the world, I guess, and also like a really hot guy. And Mallory like obviously knew who he was, and she freaks out and she beats him. And now this is crazy because she is an unknown in the world of chess and he is the world champion. And she literally like wins and freaks out and just runs away. And she's like, I'm not playing chess, whatever. She ends up getting a scholarship, I guess, or like, I don't know what it is, but they basically are like, this chess group is sponsoring her. So she decides to do it because there's a lot of money in chess. Who knew? Not me. So she can get a lot of money for her family by winning these matches. And obviously she meets Nolan again, and you know how it goes. I loved this, and when I was reading it, it reminded me of the way that I felt when I watched the show The Queen's Gambit. I've never played chess in my life. I've never had an interest in it, but it, like, Allie Hazelwood pulled off what that show did, where you were able to just completely become immersed in that world. And like in the show, I was watching these chess matches, like freaking out, like rooting for I forgot the main character's name, but like rooting for our girl. And in this book, the way she writes these matches, I was like, oh my God, like I was getting like nervous for Mallory. Like you're really fully in it. And that was like such a fun part of this book. And then there's the relationship and then all the other drama and stuff. And I just really, really love this. I could not put it down. Like I enjoyed it so much. I gave it 4 stars, but this is an interesting case where I probably would have given it 5 stars if I was able to read it in one sitting. So, and that's something also to keep in mind, like the when you're reading books. So I started this book and I could not put it down. I started it very late at night and then I had to go to bed. And then I wasn't able to pick it up again for 2 more days. And I still loved it so much. I gave it 4 stars. But I think if I had read it all in that one sitting and never come out of that bubble, I probably would have given it 5 stars. But I guess that it would be a 4.5 then if I did have stars. But I loved it so much. It was such a fun ride. Like Mallory was such an interesting character. The things with her family were very, very interesting. Nolan has family stuff too. He was so interesting. Like just such a cool, like once again, Allie kind of introducing me to this world I never would have known anything about, and making me enjoy it so much. And I know she has another YA book coming out, I think soon. I think in the beginning of 2024. So I'm excited for that. And I'm excited that she's kind of writing, it seems like she's writing both at the same time. So that means double the Allie Hazelwood books for us. So there's nothing wrong with that. I loved it. Also, the title is Check and Mate. And I remember when, before this book came out, it was like, oh, Allie Hazelwood is writing like a Fated Mate series. But they never talk about that. And like, I'm deep into an ACOTAR reread. So the theme of mates is like very much on the brain. And there is a sense of like, they have this connection they talk about, but it's not like mates in the sense of like Feyre and Reese's, but that was an ACOTAR spoiler, but I'm assuming everyone's read it at this point. I'm going to keep it in. But yeah, so if you had heard that and you were assuming it was going to be, there's no fantasy aspect to it. It's just like, I guess they would be mates, but also like Check and Mate is just like such a clever title. So I gave that, let's just say 4.5. I gave that 4.5 stars. That is Check and Mate by Allie Hazelwood. Okay, our final book is not YA, and this is The Leftover Woman by Jean Kwok. I picked this up not knowing what to expect, and oh my God, you guys, this book was so, so good. It is such an interesting narrative on race and motherhood and like sociological like positions in society and New York society and everything that goes into that. And it is, I would say this is a literary suspense, but it kind of reads as a thriller. So I can't say too much, but I still want to cover this book because it just impacted me so much. It's one of those that you just pick up not knowing anything about it before you go in, and I was absolutely blown away. It's under 3 pages. It's really short. It's such a quick read because there are crazy, crazy twists and turns that I was like, oh my God, I could not stop reading it. So, our 2 main characters are Jasmine and Rebecca. Rebecca is a white woman who lives in New York with her husband, who is like super hot, and he's a professor at Columbia, and who is like, his specialty is China. He teaches something about Chinese society or whatever. And he like spent a lot of time in China in his past, and he was like really ingratiated in the culture. He speaks Chinese fluently. He met Rebecca in China and then they moved back to New York together. She is from a super wealthy, kind of old moneyed New York family. She works in publishing and she is very high up at this publishing house that her dad either founded or he worked at before he passed away. And because of that, there's a little bit of like Nepo baby involved, and she is kind of under a lot of pressure. And we know in the past, like the not so recent past, there was a major scandal at the publisher where I think she's like I don't know the term. Like she's not like an editor in chief because that's not in a publishing title, I don't think. But she like is making like the big decisions. And there was an author who wrote a memoir, and she approved it and she wrote on it and whatever. And or she didn't write on it, but she edited it, and it was like her big project. And it came out that the author had plagiarized and kind of like not plagiarized, but like made a lot of things up, and like none of it was true. And Rebecca was like, we had fact checkers on it. Like I was hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray too, but she caught the blame. So her position at her job now is very, very, she's under fire. It's not certain. There's not a lot of job security. So that is what's going on in Rebecca's life. So her and her husband adopted this Chinese baby, and her name is Fiona. And when we meet her in the book, she's like 5 or 6 years old. She's like a really sweet kid. We know that she was kind of a victim of the Chinese one child policy. So I'm assuming everybody knows what that is. And since she was daughter, she was put up for adoption. And since the husband has such deep connections in China, he was kind of the one who facilitated the adoption. Hint, hint. That is a hint. Like if the husband's facilitating it, maybe it's not going through an adoption agency. And they have Fiona, and she's like a really sweet little girl. So, but Rebecca's kind of like an absent mother, and she talks about that a lot. Like, because you're in her perspective, and she pushes her daughter to like be obsessed with ballet, even though she's really not. And Fiona is just like, I pretended I liked it for you. Like, it's like sad, but she's like such a sweet kid. And Rebecca is very intimidated by Fiona's nanny, Lucy. Lucy is Chinese, and she kind of gets a little bit jealous when her husband and the nanny are speaking together in Chinese, and she feels left out, and she gets a little bit worried, and she notices Fiona go to the nanny Lucy before she would go to Rebecca. And it just like is weighing on her, and she's like, it's just like it's a whole thing. It's a whole plot line about how Rebecca feels towards her nanny, but she also knows that like she wouldn't be able to raise her daughter full time. Like she needs the nanny. So then the other half of the book is from the perspective of this woman, Jasmine, who is an immigrant, a Chinese immigrant living in New York City, where the book takes place. And she, you know, that she escaped an abusive husband to come over here, but she had to borrow money from a gang to get here. So she has to pay them back. And she, when we first meet her, she's going to all these different restaurants trying to get work, but she's undocumented and she's not able to. And she ends up finding work in a strip club. And we follow her through what all of that is like. And you know that she is just trying to make enough money to pay off the gang who, like funded her immigration to America. And she is, you know, that she's scared of them, you know, that she's scared of her husband finding her. At the same time, she kind of runs into an old childhood friend from China, and things start happening with them. And that's all I can say, because all of the plot lines start coming together, and the book is split up into a few different parts. And when the first part ends with this insane twist, I was like, what the fuck? Like, I could not stop reading. It was so good. It goes places like you never imagined. Like I said, it is such an interesting narrative on motherhood and like raising a child and race, and it's just so good. It was so well done. I really cannot recommend this more. I've been seeing a lot of hype for this on Bookstagram, but I think it deserves more hype than it's getting. It was honestly, this one will stick with me. It was so great. I gave it 4 stars. That is The Leftover Woman by Jean Kwok. Okay, and now to end our first episode of 2024, it's time for some mood reads. So if you missed the last episode where we did it for the first time, this is the ending segment to the show where I will be curing your guys' mood reads. So keep an eye on the Professional Book Girl Instagram, because every once a week I will be posting taking mood read requests where you just pop what your mood is, and I will recommend a book based on that mood. First one, we got 3 requests for something that feels like New Year's Eve. So like New Year, new me, New Year vibes, New Year's Eve, whatever. I have 2 recommendations for this one. The first one I actually haven't read yet, but it is a New Year's book that I'm planning on reading in the first week of January, and it is The Second Chance Year. It is about a girl who had a bad year. So I was like, do you know what, I can sympathize with her on that. And she decides she wishes for a redo, and she gets to basically redo her year. The second one is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle, and I don't know if it's necessarily New Year's vibes, but I read this. I think it was either my last or my first read of a year. So I read it over New Year's a few years ago, the year that it came out, and it just always sticks in my head as a New Year's read. It is devastating. It is very emotional. I know I cried a lot reading this book, but it is so good. It's one of my favorites. I'm pretty sure I had given that 5 stars. Our next request comes from Mackenzie, and she is in the mood for a cozy winter fantasy, and I'm going to recommend ACOTAR, aka Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, maybe because I am deep into an ACOTAR reread. As you guys know, I'm on book 4 of 5, and then I'm planning on, I decided very late last night that I am going to reread Crescent City 2 before Crescent City 3 comes out at the end of January. So I'm just like I'm in my ACOTAR era again. I first read them over 5 years ago. I read them before I even had a Bookstagram, before they were hyped up on Bookstagram. And I loved them So much. They really were like, it is the gold star fantasy series for me. I have read all of them. I've been getting a lot of questions lately if I've read Throne of Glass. I have read Throne of Glass. I am planning on rereading those in 2024. I'm going to do one a month, just because I have a feeling I'm going to need a refresher. But I loved Throne of Glass, and I know not everyone feels that way. My recommendation is you need to go into it knowing that you're going into a long adventure, like a quest, if you will. I describe them as Game of Thrones light. Like they remind me of like Game of Thrones, but like YA and for the girls, you know? So I loved that. But I would say ACOTAR, also the one I'm reading right now, is about the winter solstice, which is Christmas. So very fitting. I've been reading it all week next to the Christmas tree. Just a fun like escape, you know, like they're Sarah J Maas's fantasy books are the biggest escapism fantasy for me, and I'm loving them as much on the reread, but nothing obviously will ever compare to the first read. But it is fun because I'm picking up on different things and picking up on things that, like in the first book I was like, oh my god, all these little Easter eggs, things like that. So yes, for your cozy winter fantasy mood, I recommend ACOTAR or any Sarah J Maas. And finally, Ariana is in the mood for chaos. And for her, I would recommend The Brothers Hawthorne. This is the latest book in the Inheritance Games series. I would recommend reading the whole series before you get to this one. It's interesting the way that this series was kind of laid out, because it was books 1 through 3 were like very much, this is a series, the Inheritance Games, one of my favorite YA series. I highly recommend reading that. The first book is pretty much like Knives Out. And then this one was meant to be a spinoff, but like it is a spin-off, but it's almost not to bring it back to Sarah J. Maas, but almost in the sense of like how A Court of Silver Flames was like, it's very much still part of the series, but it feels separate. That is the way Brothers Hawthorne was. But in this one, we're in the perspectives of the brothers, and you learn so much about their lives and their dads and things like that. But like this book felt like chaos in the best way, because there's so much going on. The whole premise of this series is that it's like puzzles and riddles and things like that. And it felt like there's so many different ones going on in this, unlike in the Inheritance Games, so they're all kind of on the same adventure. So I really love that book. I know some people were feeling burnt out by the Inheritance Game series by the end of it, which I also was, but this one reinvigorated my love for it. I'm excited that she's continuing the series. I'm excited to see where it goes next. I really love those characters. And this book was just like chaotic good, you know, like fun chaos. It was really fun. So that is our show, the first episode of 2024. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure you're following, subscribe to whatever you have to do on whatever podcast platform you are listening on. Follow me on Instagram at @KaraWatt. Follow the show on Instagram at Professional Book Girl. If you're inspired to pick up any of these books, head to the bookshop.org page for it, bookshop.org/shop/professional book girl. Don't forget, our January book club read is tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. If you want to be included on that episode, send a video or a voice memo to professionalbookgirlpod@gmail.com. The announcements just get longer every episode. Thank you for being here. Happy New Year. There's so much more PBG to come in 2024. It's going to be so much fun. I'm so happy you're here.